Good evening. Welcome to Township Board meeting for Tuesday, September 26th. And I'd like to ask Mr. Mansour to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We'll start out with an approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
All those in favor?
Discussion?
Sure.
So there was a modified agenda that was issued at a little before 10 o'clock today. What was the change between, excuse me, what was the change between that and the one that was published the previous Friday?
The only item on there that was a change, Trustee Mansour, was it had been inadvertently left approval of the minutes, and there were no minutes that were being approved on this agenda.
Got it. Thank you.
Could I add one issue?
Sure.
Did we discuss on item C, under 7C, that date would actually be our last meeting in October?
We did an executive staff this morning in
So
order to
let's-
have notification.
So will that become, that'll be the
4th.
24th, our fourth Tuesday?
Yeah, just for the rest of the board, what looks like that's the 24th. Item C, 7C, we're looking at, instead of public hearing on October 12th, it'd be the 24th due to publication, length of time we need for the publication. So we'll go ahead and change that on the agenda right now to the 24th of October. Also, I believe that we probably will have an executive session at the end, so we'll keep that on there too. A brief one. Okay, any other items that we might need to change?
For
on the agenda?
clarity,
Yes,
future agenda items, that comes up, you state those when you get to that,
yes.
okay.
Okay.
So are we going to have an amendment to the,
I'll amend my motion so that it reads that we're making the change from the 12th of October in 7C to the 24th.
Okay, you support that? Whoever second?
It was Mr.
Joe.
Massey.
Okay, Joe, you support? the
Yes.
change? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll open the floor for citizen comments, and we'll start here on the left side of the room. Would either of you like to make a comment, or we'll move to the back of the room? Mr. Erb? Actually, if you want to make a comment on that, you need to do it at the beginning now. Sure. And please give us your name and address for the record, and thank you for joining us.
Yes,
And
nice
if
to
you
be
could
here.
pull the microphone down a little bit so that, there you go.
Okay.
That'll be good.
That would be
Thanks.
terrible. Well, my name is Mary Bedford, and I live at 7281 Green Valley Drive, and that's Grand Blanc Township, of course. And my friend and I, Linda Tremblay, have spent several months trying to get a petition passed and signed to have our roads paved, which have not been done for 40 years at least. And we can't patch anymore. They're falling apart. Our neighborhood is doing a turnover where the older people are moving on and what have you. Younger people are coming in. So we have kids riding bikes and walkers who are being hurt, namely, and different things happening. So anyway, we decided that I would stand up and start this whole thing. We ended up with one petition. This is before Mrs. Lane came back into office, and we had a petition for per parcel as opposed to footage like we did before. And we started taking, we had 5 of us involved at that time. We started taking the petition around, and it was very expensive. It was called Option 1, which was well over almost $12 million. And that was guaranteed at least a 20-year lifespan. Well, we had one neighbor who took it upon, and we were working with Jeff Sears at that time, and we had a neighbor who started making phone calls with the road commission and Jeff Sears and emailing back and forth, back and forth. By the time all was said and done, we ended up with 3 petitions on the table. And so we had to start all over again. And everyone that signed the second petition, although, again, I'll bring it up that it's not necessarily a recommended one, neither is number 3. we were lucky enough to get the people that had signed for the number 1, which was way less than the majority that we needed, to come down and sign option number 2. And so we now have a 51% option 2 in motion that has been accepted, or hopefully will be accepted, for the next step to go on to the road commission, the engineering, and what have you. We need our road, and I know the township and the road commission cannot help us. We had people say they could not afford it, they would not sign anything. We did our best, and Linda and I are at the point where it's now or never, so option 2 has got to go through. So that's why we're here tonight, and very happy to be on the agenda, very happy about that 1024 meeting. And I understand that Kathy will send out letters to all of our neighbors, the happy ones and not. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Go to the back of the room. Good evening.
Good evening, Ed, 7212 Porter Road. I was going to talk about item 7B, but I'm going to talk about 6B now. That's about the fire millage. I really take offense to that, the city wanting to negotiate. We're supposed to be partners. We should analyze it, troubleshoot it. We've been doing this for months now. I don't understand what this new angle of the city is, the one I have to talk with the attorneys about this. This board has already made the decision of what we're doing. When it talks about the fire millage negotiation, that's all over. It's done with. So, I just have to make them comments on it. It's all over with. We're done. And the millage isn't one of the big hurdles. We also got to deal with the operating of, what our operating agreement is. How will the city get past those hurdles? They can't get past this hurdle. We've spent months and months of time on this. Please don't reopen negotiation. I really don't think that you're asking enough for the future of this community for a millage. I think we need a growth pattern, and what I see is there's not much room for funding for growth for the township. I know there's all kinds of angles you can play on that, but please don't reopen negotiations about millages. We've spent months on that. I've spent years on it. Last board was involved in trying to get this thing going. So I can go on and on forever on that one, so I'll change subjects now. Was item 8C, now it's 7C. That is assessment district for road paving. I just want to tell a true story. First house I bought was on a very bad road. In fact, I built a new house on a very bad road. That was in 1971. 73, they're putting in a new road, repaving. I didn't have anything to say about it. Clinton Township, they just said, we're repaving a road, you're going to be special assessed. The road was that bad. So I think this board, and I do want to say this, I sold that house 10 years later for twice of what it was worth, what I paid for it. I have to think that some of that was because I improved the road. People were more willing to go there. I couldn't stand living on that thing until they paved it, then I liked it. So I'll play it both ways. Sometimes I couldn't afford it at that time when it was my first house. I screamed and hollered and yelled, but there's nothing I can do about it. That road needs replacing, period. So, just wanted to bring that one up, and I sold it 10 years later for double of what I paid for it.
So you're saying it was special assessed without necessarily a petition?
Correct. But they were right. It was that bad. It was that bad. So, and there were 4 roads in there, subdivision. They had to do all 4 roads. And it was just, so I really recommend that. If a road gets, and I don't know how they rate roads, okay? If 1 through 10, 10's being the good, when you start dropping below 5, I think it's got to start thinking, And when you fix a road, fix the road. No patches. We can always have these alternatives. Doing it cheaply, it comes back and haunts you. It comes right back here. So if you're going to fix a road, do it right. Be done with it. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ert. Any other public comments? Okay, with that, we're going to move down to our consent agenda, and,
So moved, Mr. Chair.
okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda, is there a second?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Future positioning. The board will consider adoption of a board policy on the content of all recorded meeting minutes. Everybody received the policy for that.
Yes,
Good evening, Mr. Thomas.
Sorry, Mr. Bennett.
No problem. We'll have the minutes reflect that you're here now. And so anyways, we're just going over the policy for board minutes. And I think everybody received that in their packet. Did anybody have any suggested changes or amendments to that policy?
use the policy of the, which one?
Regarding the minutes.
Oh, yes, I have a
Okay, Mr.
motion
Massey.
I'd like to make in regard to.
Well, before we get to a motion, let's just, we'll make the suggestions, and we'll make a motion for the whole thing, because there may be some other suggestions, too.
Oh, okay,
I'm just thinking, there may be, I don't know. But
okay.
what's your suggestion, Mr. Massey?
My suggestion in the first paragraph, at the end of the motion of the board,
Okay.
to insert in accordance with the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. Any other items,
Chair-
Mr. Mansour?
Chairman Bennett, further down in the verbiage there, it talks about 3 days
Yes.
advanced. Can we add 3 business days to that?
Okay. Any discussion on either of those suggested additions, or?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend that if it's accepted, that if we can, we don't have to bring it back to the board because it's so simple to insert.
Yeah.
If that's agreed, if that's voted by the board to be acceptable.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Can we, David, or?
Sure.
Any other changes anybody would suggest? With these 2 changes made, is there a motion to?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
So, just so I'm clear about this, Clerk Lane, can you explain, kind of each step that's taken in the publishing of these minutes from the time, say, our meeting ends to the next cycle? So, for instance, you take the minutes, and then you will send them out, kind of,
I've been sending them out to the entire board.
Yep.
When you come back, most of the time, they've been general typos or, corrections of something minor.
and
And
then,
then I revise them, and then those are the ones you get in the Friday packet.
okay, and then, so that means that we get them in the Friday packet, and we approve them the following Thursday.
Correct.
So the 3 days means we have most of the next week, I guess, to,
Right. I would hope
Okay.
that whatever goes out on Friday has already been approved, because you would have had the minutes
Sure.
before that already.
okay. All right, I understand the process, thank you.
And then a final copy of the minutes that are approved get put online and?
When they're approved, then both myself and the supervisor, based on the educational seminar I went to this year, we both sign them, and then I mark at the bottom of them the date they're approved, and I send them over to Robbie for posting on the website, and I put them, the original copies, in a minute book, 3-ring notebook that I keep in the office, in my office.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions?
My
Yes.
question is to the attorney. I don't I don't have any problem putting these things in, but where, in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, which is what we have to always adhere to, what is your opinion of that statement?
I think that's fine for the very reason that you stated. I think if we put a comma after board
Right.
and then say in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, I think it's a general
Okay,
acknowledgement of the requirements of the Open Meetings Act.
right.
And I'm
And if-
happy to, I can forward a clean copy to you.
Okay, that's fine too. I would simply say if somebody has a question of what's in the Open Meetings Act, that they would then contact you if they see something in the minutes that they,
Sure, sure, that would be fine.
Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I just had a question like at the end of paragraph 1, it says, "No statements or documents will be incorporated into or attached to the minutes." And I thought that's why we were having this policy, unless approved by the board motion. So, I mean, that's what we've been doing all along. But it seems like we didn't want any extra personal opinions or statements or whatever, so why would we want to do that? I thought that's why we were trying to take that out.
Well, what I was thinking is that as a general rule, you're not going to have any attachments.
Right.
There may be times when there's an exhibit, for example, that you want to attach by majority decision by the board, then you would attach it. But 90% of the time, you're not going to have exhibits attached.
Well, we've had exhibits, but we've thrown them out in some cases. In some cases, we've attached them. So that's why I thought this was going to just throw them all out.
No, I would still want to give you the option. If you have a rare circumstance where you want to attach an exhibit, I think you need to reserve that. But again, think of it as a rare circumstance.
Right, because I thought the purpose was it was supposed to report, here's the action, here's the vote, and you didn't want personal opinions in there.
Well,
And that does open the door to that, is that correct?
No, well, I don't think, I'm envisioning again, some sort of document,
Oh, okay.
right? And so it could be.
Yeah, not a personal comment,
Right.
some kind of document. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly, like a map of something. Or
Right.
or, recently we had the issue with the cell phone tower. It might be information that, future boards look at and say, well, here's
Right.
the law on that,
Yep.
when this thing happened. So
Okay.
I think our board
Oh,
is done with trying to put personal opinion in these minutes, so I would hope that.
absolutely.
Well, that's what I
The
thought, I
board
just
would
wanted
vote to-
clarification, and
No,
I'm
it's a
glad
good
you,
point.
that, because we do need attachments like on the cell towers or something else, because it's part of the motion, but it might not be in the pack anywhere, and that way it could be recorded, and at
And I
least
think-
the future boards would have some.
And I think, Mr. Guzak brings up something that they discussed earlier in our executive committee today. It was that, it's all of the board's members' jobs to help make sure that we're staying on track. That I know, we've had several board members point out in the past where we're getting off in the weeds maybe on certain discussions, and to bring us back to what we should have focused on. And even with regard to these minutes, if they're going off track with, it's all of our jobs to say, hey, these things are out of line. So I'm confident that our board can make sure we follow what we state here. So there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any other further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, David, for drafting those, for that. And next on the item on the agenda is the board will consider the City of Grand Blanc request to have fire millage negotiations performed by each municipality's respective legal counsel. This is an issue that we discussed earlier today in executive session, and
Just say executive, excuse me, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
sorry, not executive session, our executive board
Staff
meeting,
meeting.
executive staff. Wasn't executive session. I apologize, that means something totally different. I think, Mr. Massey? did you-
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Okay, and what is that?
In that regard. My motion is I move that the township's supervisor and superintendent, on behalf of the fire task force, draft the language for the fire ordinance and submit the draft to the township board attorney, and the township board attorney to present the draft to the Grand Blanc City's attorney by October the 29th.
Okay.
Support.
Sounds pretty good. Okay. Mr. Laddie, any thoughts on, I know that, one of the things, we spend a lot of time in joint meetings with the city, and then just to simply say, hey, we're going to throw all that out and let,
Right, well, I did not take that, I didn't get the feeling that that's what Mr. Massey had in mind in his motion, and I think what I took from that was that we're gonna continue to, the superintendent and supervisor are gonna continue to speak on behalf of the board. The board, and by the way, you put a timeline in there of October 29th, but one of the results, I guess, of our discussions and negotiations and joint meetings will be the proposal of millage language and an ordinance. And from what I heard from Mr. Massey's motion, that would be formulated by you and Mr. Lehman as a result of all those discussions and all that information. And then it would just be boiled down into legalese by me and presented to Mr. Griffin. So the board keeps the policy decisions and the all the ingredients that went into it, and then we're just going to boil it down to some proposed language.
Ms. Lane?
I thought that before you took it to Mr. Griffin, that this board would get a chance to see it.
That's not a problem.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, if we hold to the 29 timeline, we're meeting on August 24th or October 24th,
Right.
so you can see it then.
Yes, Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to keep the same millage numbers, the 1% ask at 0.5%, up to 0.5%, correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's my intention.
Yeah, nothing's changed from our last
No,
discussion.
we're just going to put it in writing.
Put it in writing so we can get it documented and get ready for the election.
I think that's a good way to do it because they didn't give direction to Mr. Griffin, right? And so I think it would be absolutely appropriate for us to propose the first round of maybe the permanent or the millage language, but also the ordinance language. And I think
Yep. I think that's
fair.
critical. We're shooting for a December timeframe to have that language done. I don't want to wait till the last meeting in December to have it done. And so I think, we're making progress and we have to keep moving. Any other thoughts?
Chairman Bennett?
Yes.
So as I recall, when we started out this, the whole, at least this iteration of the fire task force, we basically commissioned a subset of the board here to go out and to start working with the fire commission. And part of that process was to have the fire commission propose back what they think that the millage support that they need is, and that I guess it was kind of implicit that we would accept that recommendation. The last recommendation that group made to this board was 1.3 and something. So now the board is proposing to proposing to go to something different than that. So I just wanted to make sure that we all were kind of tracking with that.
I heard something down here, I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Lehman?
I think it's a good point. Trustee Mansour, although I will, and Fire Chief Bob Burdette is here this evening and could speak to it as well, but the last recommendation that we had in the last task force meeting from Carl, the treasurer from the Fire Commission, he was pretty adamant at 1.5, that, up to 1.5. And so I know that the last thing that the full board had looked at, they were at 1.325.
I remember I'm standing at the podium using that 1.3, I forget exactly, but in that range.
Right.
But I don't recall that task force presenting back to the executive, or to this group, the request for 1.5.
Well, yeah,
And Chief Burdette, can you maybe shed some light on it as well as like where your final numbers were before?
and the composure of the task force changed too over a period of time too. It went from having 3 people on it to having 5 people, and then so. And I think it was kind of a work group more than a group to do all the work and us simply just to rubber stamp it. But I think it was more of a work group.
It was basically a work group of individuals coming together to try to figure out how much the fire department needs to operate into the future.
Yep.
And it was, our figures were based on where the fire department is today, that what we would need to extend or continue our same operation level, meeting those goals that we presently are obtaining.
Yep.
With growth in the township that's anticipated, and Mr. Limata and Mr. Bennett have mentioned, that we do not feel that 1.325 would be able to substantiate our operational needs. A 1.5 would.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, and the other consideration, I think, were for the capital needs that we're, Mr. Mance, where we're looking at backfilling for a couple of years. Because we have about, what, $4 million worth of trucks that we're going to need fairly soon. And rather than, if we take out bonds or loans for those vehicles, we'll be paying 86% of the interest on it. So our thought is, let's see if we can't fund that up front, and we can always back off that $500,000 contribution after we backfill for what we should have been putting away for the last 7 years, so.
Okay, I just wanted to
So-
make sure we were kind of
Yeah.
in keeping with the process that we
Yeah.
agreed to at the beginning of this.
I think, you know, the beauty of this millage is that that $500,000 contribution from the township can be adjusted to make sure that if property values continue to rise, that we can back off that and level off. But at the same time, we're making sure that we have enough to fund our capital needs too. They're dipping into our general fund. I don't think the majority of our residents realize that we're having to dip into our general fund to fund the fire. And for us, it's, you know, you take a look at the percentages, and I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have to dig out of our general fund. You know, for the city, which is paying about, what, 15%? It isn't hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's why we have to be a little bit more accurate on where we're at on this millage, because if we undershoot what we need, we have to make it up out of our general fund.
As it stands now, we will still be contributing out of our general fund,
Right, but.
even with the increased
Yes.
$500,000.
Absolutely.
But hopefully we will, we'll put enough capital away that we won't have to bond for vehicles. So at least it'll go towards capital and not towards interest. Okay, any further discussion? There was a motion, was that seconded, Ms. Lane? I believe it was seconded,
Yes, it was.
okay?
Could I, one more,
Yeah, Mr.
regarding representation on the board, the fire commission. Through you, Mr. Laddie, is that a open discussion, or is that a executive session discussion?
No, I think it's an open discussion.
It's my understanding that there may be a feeling on that the commission representation doesn't necessarily have to be the way it is today.
Well, the two apiece and the at-large choice between the four that are appointed. In other words, the statute says there has to be 2 representatives from the city and 2 representatives from the township, and then they choose a 5th. Well, the way the discussion we had several years ago was that for the first 6-year term, that representative was going to be from the township. The agreement is silent to whether or not, the agreement says that representative shall be from the township. I suspect the city's going to want to have a conversation about the second term of that being from the city, but we may want to, that may be a part of our ongoing discussion, because I think there's been a general feeling, and I don't want to speak for all of you, but there's a general feeling that given the percentages of contribution, that perhaps that 5th person should be a resident of the township. But remember, they're chosen by the 2 representatives of the city and township, so it's not like we're handpicking somebody and putting them in. So I think that'll be a part of our ongoing discussion.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out there while we're doing this whole millage thing. Thank you.
Any other points before we move on? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item on the agenda, under operational issues, the board will consider a motion to accept as a second reading and approve the 2017 water and sewer ordinance revision to formalize the water rate increase passed on from the Genesee County Drain Commission.
Chairman, I would move that ordinance be approved.
Okay?
Support.
Okay. Been motioned and supported, and we had plenty of discussion on this, I know, last month, since this is the second
Chairman,
reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me ask just one more question
Sure.
about that. So when will the water rate increase come to the township? When will Genesee County increase our rates?
Mr. Limita?
Those rates will be effective with the September billing, so we're gonna bill out, we bill quarterly, so it will be retroactive back. So if you guys were to approve this, we'll publish it, it goes into effect in October. People who start getting their bills that are quarterly billed, it does go back and capture what we are already being charged from the increase.
So they lay on top of each other? There's
Correct.
no offsets?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Kent?
And I want to, for the public's sake, let the public know, my support of that motion is not that I am in agreement with and wholeheartedly enthused that we're getting an increase. It's, my feeling is that we don't have a choice without harm to the rest of the, you know, the whole development. So reluctantly supporting and reluctantly going to support the motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm reluctant about the whole idea about water rates, simply because you would go back and retrieve the records when the Drain Commission spoke before the board, the township board. He clearly stated that the new water pipeline of the new water company, KWA, did not need the city of Flint to move forward. So I have some concerns about what has happened between that time and now, okay? Since it's clearly stated that the reason for the increase, implicitly or not, is that because of the Flint situation. So what has happened between that time and now? That when the Drain Commission clearly stated before the Grand Blanc Township Board that he did not need Flint, and now he's saying that he needs Flint. That's a fact. You can retrieve the information.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Massey. And there will be an open house, and we'll probably all have a chance to ask those questions directly of the Drain Commissioner later in October. They're having an open house for the new water treatment facility. So there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item on the agenda, the board will consider a review of the township board adopted credit card policy, and included in your packet was a copy of the policy. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review it. I think everybody has signed for their credit card. I know there's a question as far as what happens. Each person has to sign the policy before they receive their township credit card. Purchasing with the credit card is restricted to obviously township type purchases. It's not, you know, like a business or a personal card where you can use it for meals and things of that nature. But I don't know, Mr. Limita, did you want to recap the policy at all, or highlights of it, or?
A couple things. I mean, the credit card policy is designed, and I think it's pretty clear, the policy statement as a guide for all the purchases, and the authorization to use it. It also requires that anybody who gets assigned a credit card that it belongs to the township will receive a signatory sheet that they need to fill out. Basically restates the policy in that sheet, and just because there was a question from one of the trustees to make sure that we had all of those, I brought it along with me because the credit card numbers are on there. It's not going to be a public document, obviously, but if anybody wants to review it, I do have it, and we have copies of everything that everybody signed acknowledging that they received the credit card, what the credit card number was, and what the policy entails. So I will say that I believe that the policy works as designed. If there is discrepancies in any of the purchases on there, it gets flagged by finance. The finance director notifies the superintendent, and the superintendent notifies the board. I do believe that the policy in its present format is working and will continue to work in the future. Certainly, if there's any concerns from any of the board members about changes, we'd be happy to make those.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. My first question, well, I don't quite understand. How could the Clerk Lane misuse the credit card the same day twice? I would like for that to be explained.
I think we want to stand, yeah, I don't know, Mr. Laddie, I don't know, is there,
I can-
probably for this discussion,
Well, I don't, again, within the parameters of discussion on the credit card policy, I don't know if you need to get into different examples, but, like, I guess if Clerk Lane has
I don't have a
an
problem
answer,
explaining it. I had to go to Joanne's in order to, finally got the picture, went to Joanne's to pick it up, to order it and get it matted and everything, and happened to have had my own personal picture that had been damaged in the water. And when Joanne's person was doing all the paperwork, she went ahead and inadvertently went ahead and put each of the items on a separate slip. And then when everything was done and I'm getting ready to go out, I said, "Oh, did you happen to use the township card on that?" And she goes, "Yeah, I did." And it was, "Are you going to make me go through voiding it and redoing it and everything?" And I just said, "Nope." I said, "I will simply take care of it with the township." The other, when I was asked about that one, I noticed that I had taken a staff member out to lunch. And I said, "Oh, no, that's my personal thing, even though it was business. I preferred to pay for it myself." So it was just a busy day, and it inadvertently happened. And rather than even, I had kept that card in my drawer that whole time. Now I gave it to Kathy and said, our finance director, well, no, I actually gave it to Megan to give to Dennis, who gave it to Kathy, and said, "Here, if I need a credit card for any township, I'll come and get it. Otherwise, I don't even want to have it in my possession and have that kind of a mix-up again." But as soon as they contacted me, I went over and wrote out my personal check, was receipted in, and I think nobody had a problem with it. And I have certainly different things here that Mr. Laddie and Mr. Lima to say, "Oh, I could have the township pay for it." My value was, no, I prefer to pay for things for my election workers and that out of my own pocket, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I
Mr.
have
Mason.
one question. Do you mind if I ask you a question, Clerk
Fine.
Lane?
No.
Okay. Is this the first time you have ever been issued a township credit card?
I don't know if I was issued one before.
for me,
I mean, it's
yeah.
brand
I
new.
want to make sure that we stay on policy, and if there's changes to the policy that we need to make,
Yeah.
I think, one of the things Ms. Lane, mentioned that it was used, outside of this manner, but the policy is meant to make sure that anything's caught. It's just like, we had a policy in the last, I think last month with regard to initiating bank transfers. And it's not something that we've had any issues with, but it's something that we want to have a policy so that it's clear cut as to how it's handled. And I think the credit card, we want to make sure that the policy we have is clearly stated. I think that our finance department caught it and brought it to Dennis's attention. Dennis brought it to our board's attention, or I brought it to our board's attention. And so if there's changes to that we need to make, then we need to know. But I think the great thing that's happened with our township is that with our staffing is that we have professionals at every level of our operation. In our finance department, is our superintendent, and so I think the other good thing is that we have people that are willing to do their job, and even if it's a board member that that's not doing their job to say, hey, you know what, we're out of place here. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, as I read through the policy, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Where are you at in the policy? And
Well, as I read the policy,
Okay. All
okay, I recall, it states that if you misuse the card inadvertently, you're supposed to notify the township that you have misused it inadvertently.
Okay.
And based on what you just said, is that our finance department caught the error. Is that true or false?
Mr. Limita, I wasn't
No.
here at the time, so what?
I believe what occurred and what you heard Clerk Lane say was that when she realized what had occurred, she brought in her check along with letting, alerted the finance that she had a check to give. And in fact, I've got a copy of it right here. And she brought it in right after that had occurred and realized that it was on the statement. And she brought in a check to the finance department, made out to Grand Blanc Township. The memo was Joanne's pictures and the exact amount for what had been put on the card.
So she acted before the finance department reflected it?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Guzak?
No, that's the
Okay.
clarification. I thought,
Okay.
I just wanted
Alright.
clarification that she acted before they said anything.
All right.
And she did with a check. She brought a check in there.
And, you know, the beauty of our board being able to have a superintendent that takes care of the day-to-day operations is that our board is focused on the policy and not necessarily the day-to-day operations, but is this policy something that's good, did this work? And are there any tweaks that we need to make to it? And Mr. Massey, you know, I applaud you for wanting to look at the policy and make sure that it is working, that ultimately, you know, what it comes down to is that as a board, we have to do our job, and elected position is something that is kind of tricky, in that you're working for the people, and guess who gets to fire you? The voters. And if somebody doesn't do their job, that's what the hammer is. So we can have all the policies we want, but ultimately it's the voters that make the decisions. So anyways, I'm confident that the policy that we have here is, unless somebody comes up with a hole that I don't see, I think it's pretty sound. I don't know, Mr. Ladd, did you ever see anything in it?
No, I think it's pretty good. And remember that, I mean, the purpose of the policy is to catch things that are nefarious and criminal, all the way down to something that's a simple oversight or an accident. And I think that you can be assured through the process that we just described, that it works. Finance is on it, that when the mistake was realized by the individual, they remedied it consistent with their policy, and it's nice to know that the policy's in place and that the personnel carried out.
Okay. All right.
Did we want to have a motion or reaffirm or anything?
I think we're good. We have the policy. I don't know.
Okay, great, okay.
Okay. Unless somebody wants to make a motion, but otherwise I'm good with it.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chair.
Item C, the board will consider a motion to accept the resident submitted petitions to create a special assessment district for Green Valley subdivision for road repair and schedule a public hearing for October 24th.
I would gladly
2017.
move that motion.
Okay, Ms. Lane made the motion.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Kent?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to either Clerk Lane or Mr. Ladd, do we know the percentage of
50.
acceptance?
55% of the lineal front footage was done for petition number 2. With petition 1, which was a total redo, we had roughly about 35%.
What would have been the cost on that option 1?
I put it here.
Was
It was in the
back?
option,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
When I came on board in November of last year, Green Valley came to me and said, Kathy, will you help us? And I agreed. We came up with 3 petitions. I put in your packet the lineal front footage chart and highlighted in yellow the one to show you the difference. Option 1,
962,000.
Yes.
Was it 962?
Yep. The next one's 382, next one's 165.
And which one are we going with?
Option two.
Okay.
382.
And
Well,
I'll
the reason-
support that motion.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
My concern is, are we in line with the road commission guidelines?
What did the road commission, do they make recommendation on this, Mr. Limita, on which project they would recommend, or?
When this process started with the road commission, we kind of had gone back and forth several times. If you can remember back when this process had started, the road commission almost always is going to come back and recommend that you do a complete redo on every road, because then you got a 20-year, minimum 20-year road life. And that's what you see when you looked at option one about what they would have done to get the 20-year, 15 to 20-year road life. And that was their initial recommendation. The roads in this subdivision, as you heard, they're in rough shape, and I don't know if any of you have driven them recently. They're really rough shape. So it probably could warrant, but unfortunately for the folks who were bringing the petition out, they were just not getting any traction on a complete redo. So that's where they asked for additional options, is there any way? And so our DPW director worked specifically with the road commission saying, we understand that your recommendation is that it's a complete redo to create a 15 to 20 year lifespan for the roads. But if they can't get it done, what else can we do? And so this is in conjunction with the road commission for the design of that petition 2 that they were able to get the 55%. So would it be their number one recommendation? No, and I believe you heard the petitioners even say that. They understand that is the number one choice or option. But it's better than doing nothing, I think, is how it came down to. And so we went back and forth with them, and again, the road commission did put this design and estimate together on what it would be, but with the idea that it's probably a 5-year lifespan fix.
Yeah, I didn't see this in my packet for whatever reason, but for the public, just for viewing public that doesn't have the luxury of looking at this, we're looking at petition number 1, or option 1, was basically a total cost of $962,000 with an individual homeowner cost of $11,057.47, which would have been about $1,105 plus interest financed over 10 years. Petition number 2, or option number 2, the individual cost is $43.90 and 80 cents, $4,390. Over 5 years, that would be financed at $878.16. And then option 3, or petition 3, was for a total of $165,162 for an individual cost of $1,898.41, and financed over 2 years, that will be $949.21. And that's an expected lifespan of 3 years. So that option 2 is a lifespan of 5 years. Ms. Lane?
Right. The ladies circulated, went
All
back
three.
and started all over, and the pages were clearly marked option 1, 2, or 3. But we did tell everyone at the informational meetings that we had that we would not go along with option 3 because it was absolutely inappropriate for the work and the cost. And so option 2 was the one that the residents preferred, although everybody knows option 1 is better, but it comes down to what they have to pay, and there's no reimbursement other than the engineering costs from Genesee County.
Right.
So that's what we're asking for, is to proceed.
Mr. Kent?
I didn't see, apologize, I didn't see at the bottom them percentages were on there. I didn't go far enough down the page, but what I
There's
do.
2 pages on the
Yeah,
roads.
I see that now, so, but the blanks are not necessarily a no, that's just possibly nobody home or no contact.
I would say Mary and Linda went to every home, even if they had to go back in the morning, at the
Okay.
night, or whatever, and
So the
people
bo-
didn't want to sign at all.
Okay, so it doesn't mean no, it doesn't mean,
They were-
oh, Okay, okay, so it is a no. So if we got 45% on option 2 says no. Okay. I want to make sure I understood.
Yeah. One of the things that I encountered in the last few weeks is a resident, not from this neighborhood, but from another one that was complaining about their streets. It turns out that they, in fact, had gone with one of the, probably if we were looking at those 3 options, it would have been the option 3 where it was a 3-year fix.
Yeah.
It's been about, what, 7 years now?
2009.
Yeah, 2009, they had it done. Well, they're complaining that the roads are falling apart. Well, they were told by the road commission that it was a 3-year fix, so I just want to make sure that the residents know, you know, when they come before us at the public hearing, what we're looking at for time frame, that the road may last, because it,
Well,
you know, because we'll end up, and the road commission will end up bearing the brunt if the road starts falling apart earlier than what residents anticipated.
Mr. Chair, I think you'll see with all of the information that I developed with these options, with the costs that they had for each of them directly from the road
Right,
commission,
that they are well informed.
and all of the other documents we gave them, they understand, and that's what they chose, so.
Right, they knew now, but give it 5 years and we'll see.
Well, they'll be pulling out this information.
Okay. We hang on to records like that. Mr. Kent?
Well, I see now, so I didn't understand the page that has like the bid or the specs, I guess, for as vague as it is. That is the option 2. Okay, very good.
You would have had the sheet itself in your packet as well from the road commission,
Yeah,
because,
I'm looking at it.
and the 3 options in writing that are highlited.
Did everybody receive this though? Because I,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, part of the package.
Yeah, they, I'm
okay.
glad you,
Chairman Bennett? I know there's a motion on the floor here.
Yes.
And just wanted to make sure that it was updated to reflect October 24th. So,
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Was I thinking on this? There was one more point I wanted to make, but. So we'll have a public hearing.
Right, this is just setting the public hearing, correct? And then we have other people that can come up and discuss it at that time,
On the
right?
24th.
On the 24th.
on the 24th. Anybody that has an opinion pro or against.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, I wanted to thank also you 2 individuals for
Mary and Linda.
circulating the petition, because, you know, it's a thankless job. And I know, you know, you said it's thankless, but somebody's got to do it, and that's kind of the bottom line. But, you know, we depend on our residents to take up that job, and I think, you know, it benefits everybody in the township when people take care of their homes and they take care of their streets and their neighborhood. And we appreciate and we understand the amount of frustration and work that you go through in getting those signatures and going back day after day. And a lot of people don't realize the work that goes into that, but I think most of the board members here will understand that, if not all of us.
I would like to just say one thing. Kathy Lane has been so instrumental in just bringing this to fruition to get this far.
Okay.
We struggled and finally, after the one neighbor raised all these questions and we ended up with 3 petitions on the board, she was there for us, and the guidance has been wonderful, and for that we are grateful.
Thank you.
Okay.
And hopefully, there won't be anybody that's going to take a petition out and try to get 51% to say no.
Right.
Which I understand
Okay.
Is that what happened with Kathy, and that's how your finger got hurt?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. Next on our agenda, what are we hearing from the community? Yeah, Mr. Kuzak?
I just had a comment, a housekeeping item. I thought I was on here, but should I wait till later to bring up a housekeeping item?
With regard to what, the building housekeeping, or?
Just an internal item.
It's an FYI for the board, Scott, and I think this is probably an
Yeah.
appropriate time. Earl
Okay,
just
that's
wants to
what I
make a
thought.
report.
What it is, we, back in April of 16, we approved the catch basin with the county to do like 16 catch basins. We approved like 35,100. The final payment just came in, and we're still way within range, because we've got 10%. It came in about 4% over, which is about $1,400. So we're just reporting it as a FYI, because if it went over 10%, we'd bring it back to the board and, of course, say we've got to approve it. But this is just to let you know, it came within 4% or $1,400, and the catch basins are all done, so it's just a reporting thing.
Very good. Thank you. So we don't need a vote on that, or, yeah, okay. One other thing under what are we hearing from the community, Kathy Lane, myself, Dennis, we met with Jet Kilmer, with Christopher Estes and George Reisig, and discussed the zip code issue that affects both the northern part of the township and the southern. In the northern part of the township, we have people that live within the boundaries of Grand Blanc but have a Flint mailing address. In the southern part of the township, we have individuals and businesses that, including Tech Village, our plans for Tech Village, that have a Holly mailing address but yet are within Grand Blanc. And it causes a lot of problems with GPS, with mailing, with a whole lot of things. We prepared some letters that all of you have at your place tonight. And one of the things that we would like to do is to, with your permission, is to post these letters on our website and ask individuals to begin signing them or stopping by the township and signing them and leaving them, so that we can, especially those people that are affected in those areas, and businesses as well, to show their support for getting the zip code changed. It's not going to be a quick fix, and we don't want to give everybody that impression, but every little bit that we can use to help us will be appreciated. And so this was one of the efforts that we wanted to try.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Chairman, in looking at the two letters here, one apparently is like from a business and others from a
Correct.
resident, but they're
Right.
both focused on that northern tier, 48507, versus the Holly one that you just mentioned. Is that?
Mr. Lane, Ms. Lane?
Right now, Tech Village Security Credit Union and their attorney, George Reisig, are working on 48442, and they will proceed in their area and feel that that is their best avenue at this time. And when they're done, they will then help us, and think that if they are successful, that would also help us in our next step. But at this time, they don't need our assistance because of the actions they've already started. But they are willing to support us, and if they come across anything we need to do in our subcommittee, we're going to do that. Jed and I circulated similar letters back in 2013. We got 1,500 of them. Well, not quite, we got about, but we went door to door and everything. So this is the first time, though, that we're asking the board to say, yes, you support us. We can put it on the website, and we're doing it in conjunction with the chamber. So if you want to get copies, we can make copies, and you can take them to any friends or.
Power just
No,
went
I
out.
guess the meeting's over.
Yeah. I'm
What?
not sure quite what happened. The power up here at the front went out. But
Yeah, I just had
Who's
a,
that?
just had a question. I know this is strictly the north end, like Al mentioned, but any resident can sign this letter, right? Any resident anywhere in the township can have their support, because it is affecting lots of places. It's not just the north end. There's pockets everywhere throughout the township. And when we saw that map, it was incredible to see all the dots in spots you wouldn't think it would be there. So it's, but anybody can actually.
Well, the letter, the way it's worded,
Yes.
would be probably more directed towards
Yes.
the people that are affected
Right.
in that area.
Okay,
because
so the
it's-
north end, so anybody in the south end should not reply to that. That's what I'm trying to
Right,
clarify
yeah.
for people.
Right,
Yeah,
Okay.
because it affects their
fix them personally.
their insurance and what have you, and their GPS location. That's a good question.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. What do you mean, may I ask the question, what does the treasurer mean by the south end? Because my interpretation of the south end, there has been a problem also with with addresses on Baldwin Road.
Yeah, there's different zip codes. Those are Holly's zip
Holly.
codes, and those people actually, they're paying taxes to us, but they have Holly schools. So that's why I was referring to
Oh, okay.
the people in the south.
And that's what Attorney Reisig is dealing with, all of the 48442, along with Security
Okay.
Bank. So
That was a great point.
they're handling that area themselves legally.
Okay.
So I think if we have a board consensus, I don't know that we need a vote, but I think we're good on that.
So we can put it on the website then?
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I'm
Massey?
hearing from the community, tree limbs overhanging Emery Road. They're very dangerous.
Okay. I heard the same on Cook Road too. And I think,
Yeah.
Mr. Sears is here, but I will make a note to,
Send my delivery trucks down. They're good at that.
okay, good point. One other thing, just to note, we had the Laird open house this past week that brought people from across the globe to Blanc. If you're not aware, it's a $14 million research and development facility that is located behind Trillium on back in that industrial drive area, and 120 employees looking to expand, possibly another 20,000 square feet, but they design, research and design antennas for every kind of vehicle you can imagine, as well as for the future of self-driving vehicles, and also for where vehicles will communicate with each other. But just a really neat thing to see that many people in Blanc from the industry, and to have it located here in our township. So anyways, anything else anybody's hearing?
Mr. Bennett?
I thought, Mr. Chair, we were going
Yes.
to bring up the special assessment letter that was
Sure.
drafted and reviewed by you and Dennis.
Everybody has a copy of that at their place as
Right.
well.
This is the other subcommittee on streets. Did you want to explain?
Sure. One of the things that we've talked about, and I know Mr. Ert had discussed earlier in public comment, was that the idea that, and we talked about it, I think at our previous meeting, that if a road gets below a certain level, maybe a PASER rating, that the board would consider reviewing with that neighborhood or sending out an informational letter. What this letter basically is for Office Park Drive, where the road is in horrible shape. We want to basically notify the residents, or the businesses that are along there and property owners, that we would like to pave that street, and we're gauging what their interest is in doing that. Many of these people are out of state, so trying to circulate a petition going door to door isn't going to work. We would have to mail it to them anyways, but if we don't get any pushback after sending this letter out, then I guess we would be well to assume that they're in favor of it. I've talked to a number of the business owners along there that actually said, how soon can we get this thing done? So I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot of pushback, but we won't know until we do something like send out this letter. So I guess, Ms. Lane?
Again, before we do anything, or before I've done anything with roads, Genesee County has been generous enough to provide us with an estimate. So when I started getting a couple of phone calls and Scott and I talked, our contact with the road commission is through Jeff Sears. We emailed them, and they, again, just like you've seen, there is a form that delineates how they're going to do a total repavement of that road, and that information from the road commission along with this letter will go out, and it's a way to at least try and see how people react when they get an informational letter knowing the cost. And we've never done it, but we can, as a township board, initiate this process by doing it ourselves. But again, I believe in being open and giving people the information up front. And it's the reason why we thought we'd try that particular road.
Chairman Bennett?
Yes.
This would be, again, subject to, just like the previous special assessment district, a public hearing,
Yes.
Yes,
and go through that process. So this just moves us down that road.
right.
That's fine, thank you.
And I actually spoke with another business area today that is interested in doing something similar to this, so actually where Laird is located.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit different situation in that part of that road is private as well as public, so. Okay, so I think we have consensus to do that, okay? Did you have another point, or, because I believe, Mr. Laddie, we need an executive session?
We do. Brief executive session to discuss employee contract negotiations.
Mr.
I will move to
Before you
enter
make a
executive session.
I'd like one other thing.
Sure,
For a future agenda item,
okay.
the RFP process policy.
Okay. All right, you made a motion?
I would move
John?
to enter into executive session for employee contract negotiations.
Second?
Okay, there's been a motion supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
We need a roll call.
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Guzan?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Okay. 8. All right.